here this evening. A Pledge of Allegiance. Arnold Albach, please lead us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. And I would just remind everyone to, if you come up to speak or if you're up here speaking, just make sure your microphone's on and you speak loudly. We got a comment from the last meeting, so it's just want to make sure that everyone hears what's happening. The consent agenda. All items listed here under are considered to be routine by the town council and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be discussed separately. Item number 1, approval of the February 3rd, 2026 Town Council regular meeting minutes. 2, approval of the check register report for February 2026. Item 3, approval of a professional services agreement with Gary Neese. So I would like to pull item 3.
I'd like to pull item 2.
Okay. Would anyone else wish to pull an item? We have one left. All right. So I will accept the motion to approve item number 1.
Motion to approve item number 1.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Item 2 is the approval of the check register report for February 2026. Council member Rudy.
Thank you. I just actually wanted to point out a couple things that maybe the residents might have questions on. The Titan commercial cleaning for the garden cleaning was actually on here twice. The only reason that is on here twice is because it was not on the January check register, so it's not a duplicate charge. There's also one for the Flights of Learning sculpture for $25,000. That actually was a donation, but that funds goes into a donation account, and then we have to pay out for that. So you don't see the donation on here, but I just wanted everyone to be aware. And then there also was a consultant for $14,850 on the Stage Creek project. That actually has been reimbursed out of permit fees. So again, you don't see that side of it, but wanted to make you aware. And that's it. Thanks.
Yeah, just a comment, since we brought up the Flights of Knowledge. So if you've walked around by the Gila Monster slide, you see a new sculpture there. It's beautiful. It's a young boy opening a book, birds flying out of it. And so that was dedicated to us. That's to a value, it's about $45,000 value. And 3 parties are involved with that. Richard Burns, resident of Carefree, Sue Bickerdike, a resident of Carefree and her business here, and the artist Bryce Pettit. So Richard Burns wrote us a check for $25,000 to fund his part of it, and then we wrote a check for $25,000 to the sculptor. So there'll be a dedication, I believe, on March 19th, no, March 25th, and we'll publish the details. So I'm not sure what the details are beyond that. Okay. Let's talk about item. So let's take a motion to approve item number 2 while we're on it.
Motion
So
to
go
approve
ahead.
item number 2.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Item number 3, which is the approval of the professional services agreement with Gary Neese. So I pulled that. So after 24 years of service, Gary had his last day on Friday. And so tonight we will, on our agenda, we have an agenda item to appoint a new town manager. And so the purpose of the agreement is to be able to tap into Gary's institutional knowledge, his experience, his know-how from 24 years, and to compensate him for that. It is, it's not meant to do any more than that. It's not for him to run anything. It's just to give a new town administrator a tool to answer questions that might come up, and myself as well. Leading up to Gary's departure, he provided a very good turnover to Kristen Cray, who's our candidate to be appointed this evening. And he actually did that. He started that process before she was the final candidate. And the reason why is the process of recruitment was tight. We knew that from the beginning. We published it, we talked about it, and we executed on it. But at the end of the day, Gary's last day was Friday. We're doing this on Tuesday. And even if Kristen wasn't appointed, it was important to retain that knowledge in town hall. So he was downloading it to her, so we'd have a town clerk who was really informed, or we would maybe have an appointee who's really informed. So that's how that went down. And let's talk about the use of those hours. So I think every one of us who is, we were all, we'll talk about it when we talk to the appointment, but the council, every council person obviously has worked with Kristen. She's been here for a year. The residents have worked with her, the staff has worked with her. We went through an interview process. She is a confident, capable person, lots of experience in Glendale. We'll talk about those details. She's independent. I saw emails where, oh, Gary's gonna be running the town still. It's, you know, he will be a source for pieces of information. And who's gonna call her? I'll call him Kristen or I. And I doubt if Kristen's is gonna exercise that very much. She's quite independent and strong, and I would be surprised. But you need to know what you don't know, and you're gonna figure it out. And we will do that. I would also say that one, we control the hours, not Gary Neese. So we, meaning we make the phone call. He doesn't come in here and start talking and the meter's running. We decide how that works. And I am convinced it'll be minimal. He's basically on call for us to, to provide information and history as we need to. And that's why we have the contract. Now, when I heard comments from the public, some good comments were made, and that's why we do these things, right? And I think there's some modifications we can make to it, which may but it doesn't compromise what we wish to accomplish. A tool, a way to get don't have lost, and it's valuable for us. It'll make us more efficient. It'll make us a better town. So a couple of things. On paragraph 1.2, it talks about the consultant shall provide services. Well, the consultant's not going to provide services. He's going to provide advice and information. We're going to provide the services, right? Our town administrator will provide the services. I'll provide the services, council, staff. And so I would suggest we change the word services to advice and information, because that's exactly what this is all about. Item 2.1 talks about the term. So my experience is, and my expectation is, in the beginning of this transition, there'll be questions, and as time goes on, it's a steep curve to there's virtually no questions. So in the first month, there'll be questions. In the second month, Gary Neese is in Europe. I don't think, probably not going to call him, at least very reluctantly. And then the third month, it'll be like, Gary who? Now, we'll be running this. We'll be running independently. And so I have no qualms in saying, modifying the language. This agreement shall commence on March 9th, 2026, period. The non-litigation part of the agreement shall continue in effect for a period of 6 months rather than a year. And the litigation part of the agreement shall continue for a period of 12 months / 1 year. And the reason for that is the litigation will go on for 12 months. And he will be deposed. He'll need to prepare to be deposed. He may be deposed several times. It's just the way this functions. So I would suggest that change. And finally, I would say in paragraph 4.3, it says, weekly billable hours shall not exceed 19 hours per week. And that's how that's written. And that was written that way, not because we're going to use them 19 hours per week, but the Arizona State Retirement System, the ASRS, says that, you can't, if you are retired, you can't be working for a municipality for more than 19 hours a week, or you jeopardize your standing in their retirement system. That's why that was put there. But I would suggest we change that to, say, 10 hours a week. And we'll, other than the litigation side of the equation, I can't imagine we'll ever do that. So they're my suggestions, and I would open up to comment from the council.
Yeah, I would say the other thing you would call it is an insurance policy.
Yeah, okay.
It's, you know, you need a password, you need something. And I would echo what John said about Kristen. Kristen got more experience than I think this whole council put together. And I don't see her needing a lot of advice or a lot of hand-holding. So I think this is going to be a very minor point. As John said, I think in 3 months you won't hear any of it. So that's my point of view.
I agree. We do need a contract. We do have to have, as Lon said, it's like an insurance policy. We do have to have access if Kristen has a question and it's something that can be solved in 2 or 3 hours and not take 2 or 3 days or weeks because she has to try to figure it out herself, which is completely inefficient. So I agree that Kristen is very well situated and will probably hardly ever need that, but just in case.
Go ahead, Diane.
Yeah, I have some comments on it. I went to the IRS site, and I want to know, have our auditors looked over this contract? Because according to the IRS, you cannot employ a government retired employee as a contractor unless they have a setup company that they have checked with the IRS with S-80, which states that our scope of services for Gary is the town administrator description for, and the IRS considers that an employee if they're doing the same functions they did. So I think that paragraph has to be rewritten to scope of services, and there has to be deliverables. He has to state what the project is, because we're the ones vulnerable. If the IRS does not like what's going on, we get penalized, and it all falls on us. So I think that has to be looked at.
Is that for a public entity, Diane, or?
No, it's for a government employee
That's what I said.
that worked for a town, that has become a consultant for the town. You can go and happy to share everything with you. But they're very strict that, a smooth transition from employee to contractor, particularly if they perform the same task, is a high-risk area for audit. The relationship should not be permanent or indefinite. So we need an endpoint on that, saying how long he's going to be there. It has to be a clearly written document that how the new role differs from the old role, including specific project deliverables rather than a general role. It's the IRS. We all know the IRS. We all don't want them on our doorstep. So they're very strict on that. There's also on the compensation, it's significantly higher than what we pay Kristen. So Gary basically was making $100 an hour as our town administrator. We're paying Kristen less. Yes, she works out around $80 an hour. So how do we explain we're now paying him 1.5 times? He's going from 100 an hour to 250 an hour, and 150 per hour on litigation. We should, if we're going to pay him, he's under subpoena, he's got to testify. If we're going to pay him, why don't we pay him the 100 an hour he was making when he was he was involved in the litigation, what was going on. So I don't think that's correct. And I'd like it looked at. I agree with Lon on the insurance. And why are we paying him expenses? All these contracts we've had with consultants, part of what we pay the consultant is for their expenses. We just paid Evolve $12,400. They didn't give us a separate, bill for travel time, so why are we doing that for Gary? And also on the indemnified, why are we indemnifying him only on gross negligence and willful conduct? It should be on negligence, that's it, not on gross. I mean, if he is negligent, it comes back on us again. And he's more likely to be negligent than gross negligent, which is a violation of safety and usually ends up with punitive damages. Willful is a deliberate action against the town if he was going to be stealing money from it. And Part B of the consultant and then the town's use, implementation, or reliance upon the services, why is he indemnified that if what we're having is using him for services and deliverables? So B should be taken out. I think it's a contract that we can't vote on until our attorney looks it over again and and the audit people should be looking at our exposure under the IRS's rules for government employees who become contractors, which is what he is. And they usually like to see a longer time between when the employee leaves and when they are doing consultant work. So those are,
So I would say that, go ahead. He's not doing the job of the town administrator. He's going to be answering questions on occasion. So if that seems unclear
In fact,
in the document.
my suggestion is that we modify the scope of services to say advice and information.
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
but if you read the whole paragraph, it's
Yeah.
the job
No, I
description.
understand that, but so
Yeah.
when you're looking at contracts, for someone to like leave a job and then become a consultant for the job to do something like you were saying, where they're actually really participating heavily and giving advice constantly and actually being part of the process, that is not what this is. This is basically a questions on occasion, which may be very, very, very limited, but it's not a situation where Gary is going to be participating in the job of the town administrator. That is not what his consulting, consulting contract is about.
Well,
It's
it
about
says-
questions on occasion.
But if you read that paragraph, it clearly says, but not limited to advising on day-to-day town operations, assisting with strategic planning, long-term initiatives, consulting on human resource issues, including staffing and personal matters.
Okay, but that's
providing-
what he can do.
But it's
If there's a
not-
question about that, it's not that he's going to be participating in that from day one, all of that. Those are just the types of descriptions that Kristen may ask him about. It's not like he's going to be sitting in the office and covering all of those areas. That's a description of what Kristen could potentially ask him about.
But it clearly is stated by the IRS. If a former government employee performs similar tasks, works on site with regular employees, you're not allowed.
But it's not
Well,
similar
it will not
tasks.
be similar tasks, it'll be advice and information.
Well,
It's
I
not
So that,
think
yeah,
we
that's
have
saying
to
performing at the
clarify it.
same
That's why-
time. He's
That's why
not
we're taking
there.
out the word services and inserting advice and information.
But I think, and also 6 months, when we elect a new president, it takes 2.5 months to transition. So I think we need to tighten up from 6 months, make it 3 months. The reason we hired Kristen, one of the big reasons, she's an in-house employee. She has worked with Gary for a year. So she is up to date on what's going on in our town. So she does not need an extended period of time unless there are things Gary was working on prior to her employee being employed by us, that she needs his expertise on things that were going on before she came on board.
There's no way that you can take someone that had 24 years of experience, unload that to someone who has 1 year and who's very talented, but also was doing her job during that 1 year. So I think Gary's done a great job of giving you as much information as he could. But, you know, she might have a question on something in any one of those categories, and she should be able just to call him and ask him versus, like what Councilwoman Amorosa said, taking 3 weeks to do the research to try and figure out what it was. So I don't see anything wrong with that insurance policy of being able to do that. We're not hiring him as an assistant. We're not hiring him as an employee. He's not coming into the office to sit there. He's to answer questions, period.
I mean, what that law is intended to do is to not, in the public sector, to not have somebody retire, because in different states there are different rules, but not have someone retire, start getting a pension, and then start getting paid again to do the exact same job. There is nothing similar about these two things, and that's what that law is trying to prevent. But that is not what we're doing here. This is an occasional question to help Kristen be more efficient and effective if she has something come up that it would be nice to be able to tap into Gary for that.
I understand that, but I think it should be clearly written. There should be deliverables, like any contract, consultant contract, saying she has the ability to call him on a specific, and then he has to give that documentation. We own it. So if he's helping her with something, we own that. But he also, is he set up? Is he a business? And we cannot, according to the government, we can't be his only client. In order for him to be a legitimate consultant, he has to have other clients.
I mean, I realize what I just explained is why that law is there, but I guess Dennis,
Yeah, Dennis, can you weigh in on?
can you weigh
this
on
subject?
whether or not he can actually answer questions without being a business and us being quote-unquote his only client?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think cities have done this a lot recently, and a lot of times they rehire the same person to the exact same job, but they bring them in under a third party who then is the actual employer for a year to kind of get around the state retirement system. Some cities have done that. I'm not as sure exactly what IRS provision Councilwoman Roth is alluding to, but clearly there are consultants that can consult on a lot of different things. This is simply an agreement with a gentleman who has 24 years of knowledge and experience with this town, and you're simply going to say, hey, if we have questions about a project that may have started a few years ago and we're not sure why it died, and you might have the background necessary to fill in some of the gaps, we'd like him to answer the phone, and we'd like him to know that if he does answer the phone and give us the information, that he's going to be compensated for it. And so that's part of the agreement. Second part of the agreement is the town is in active litigation on a matter that he still is going to be deposed on, and we're going to want his cooperation through that agreement. Now, granted, he will not be as active in that litigation as he was when he was a town employee, because we'll be cognizant of the time restrictions and things like that. But given that he will give a deposition, given that that could be a long day, couple days, we're going to want to make sure that he prepares appropriately for it. He knows he's going to be compensated if he prepares appropriately for it, and he comes in and gives the best deposition he can on behalf of the town. That's all we're trying to do through this consulting agreement. I think it's very typical. I don't find, we can clearly run it by the auditors if you want us to. I think that's fine. I know the mayor's identified 3 changes. I think we can clearly make those changes. But I don't think there's anything unusual about a consulting agreement with anyone who has provided these kind of services to a community. And I don't think he has to go out and create a company. I don't think he has to go out and go work for another company just so he can charge us. I think we can have an independent agreement with him, but we will definitely run it by the auditors to see if they have an issue with it. If they do have an issue with it, Mr. Mayor, members of council, we can always bring it back to council before we fully execute the agreement.
Well, the
So-
file form you're asking about is SS-8, and the IRS says if there's anything you're not sure about, you run it through them. And part of the compliance is document changes clearly outline in a written contract, which is what we're trying to execute, how the new role differs from the old, including specific project deliverables rather than a general role. So
Right.
our first paragraph is
What was
general.
the IRS section? I missed your section.
SS, like Sam, -8.
Okay.
But he is not going to have a role as a town administrator.
That's not what I'm talking
You-
about.
well,
This
you
is-
just
No,
said
that's okay.
the role, okay.
Dennis
No,
will, Dennis
this
will
is-
run this, Dennis will run it by,
Yeah, we can
Someone who
ask
knows
our
what they're
auditors
doing
about it, and see if they see any problem with it. We could provide them the agreement once we make, if it gets approved tonight, we make the 3 changes you've identified, we can definitely run it by the auditors and see if there's something additional they think council needs to add to the agreement.
can you also speak to the indemnity part of the contract?
Yeah, I mean, I think the indemnity part of it, I understand Councilwoman Ross' position. I think a lot of times, you know, we can go back and forth on this indemnity language, negligent, gross negligent, willful misconduct. I don't find it unusual since our negligent language to him is the same, town's gross negligent or willful misconduct, so we're just using mutual language between the two. What we're asking of him, we're giving to him, so we just use mutual language for both, that's all we did.
Okay, any other questions or comments from council before I open it up to some public comment? So hearing none, so I'll invite Arnold Aldock to come on up. So Arnold, please speak loudly in the microphone and try to limit your, yeah, I get a handle on that. Comments about 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Arnold Dolak. So I retired and I became a consultant, and I've been doing it now for the past 10 years. So my recommendation would be that Gary be required to create an LLC, which is very easy to do in Arizona, it costs you about $100. And then he's incorporated and he gets a employee identification number from the IRS. The other thing I would recommend, which I have to do, I have to buy general liability insurance for about $1 million, which costs me all of $285 a year. So the town shouldn't have to identify it. Great. Gary has provided his own identification. So that's my recommendation, and that solves that IRS issue, because you're not hiring a person, you're hiring an LLC, and Gary's an employee, or he's managing the LLC, and so I think that kind of mutes that part of that SS-81. So, but anyway, recommendation, very simple, have him form a corporation, can be an LLC or an S corp if you choose to do so, and then require him to purchase. And I have $1 million worth of liability insurance that I carry for the purpose, and I have to provide a certificate of insurance to my employer. So that solves a lot of problems. So he's no longer hiring an individual, he's hiring a corporation, and he happens to be an employee, may be the only employee of the corporation. But then you and all of my payments come to my company, and then year end I do a business filing, not a personal filing. So, I mean, that would be my recommendation. I think it solves a lot of problems.
Okay, thank you, Arnold. John Nimsky.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council.
Mr. Nimsky, pardon me for 1 moment. I want to
Oh.
make sure that you get the appropriate amount of time.
Oh, I thought I would get
You wanted Arnold
13
to
plus.
Yes, you did. Okay, I'm going to start it right now. Where you start?
I think the advice that Arnold just gave is good advice. I would just add to that, in terms of the back and forth between Councilperson Amoroso and Councilperson Roth, it doesn't matter what the intent is. You know, you say you've had a lot of contract experience. If that's the case, you know that it doesn't matter what the intent is of the auditor. What matters is what's in the contract itself, in terms of the language. Because if there's ever any kind of litigation regarding that contract, the person that's responsible for that is the author, which is this council. And that goes right to the heart of that section about scope of services. I read that section multiple times, and it is basically a job description for the town administrator. If you say all you want is to be able to call Gary every now and then, or for that matter, anybody who's a consultant, then that needs to be outlined. It needs to be outlined in terms of what the scope of services is and what the deliverables are, what the specific deliverables are. It cannot be a general statement that says, well, when we need them, we call them up and we need them. So I think the town would be well in its position to totally rewrite that section, that paragraph, and change it in terms of specific requirements that you're gonna place on Gary for whatever the specific services are that you're gonna task it at.
So we're not asking for services, though, we're asking for advice and information.
And that needs to be put in there.
That's what
Well,
I.
that's what we're
that's
doing.
Actually,
It needs to be
We are
put in.
doing
that's
that.
the proposed change that
Yeah,
that I've suggested.
but I think it needs to be very
Okay,
clear.
so maybe we just don't say what the categories of information are.
We could just,
We just say that he's gonna provide advice and information on an as-needed basis.
period.
Yep, we'll just take everything out, and that way, we're not describing a job that he's not gonna be doing anyway.
So what would you write there?
I'd be specific.
Well, that's what we're trying to do.
You know, if, you ought to know as a council specifically what kind of advice you want from Gary. First of all, the onboarding stuff should have been happening all along.
Well, it-
Whether he was an administrator for 25 years or not. Kristen has been here for quite a while. She's worked under Gary. She should by now have a pretty good idea of what the job is that Gary's been doing. Now, yes, she doesn't have the history, but that can readily be ascertained via specific duties. So to say, we're gonna pay somebody $200 or $250 a week or an hour, for quote advice, what does that mean? Gee, Gary, what do you think about fishing at Bartlett Lake?
Okay, that's inappropriate, John.
No, but we have, that's why we have specifics. Okay, so we hear you.
That-
I get it.
Sorry, I should.
Your message is clear. Don't worry about that. Okay, thanks, John.
I think we should just strike the description of what,
Yeah, we'll talk about it. Let's
Okay,
finish the
all right.
public
Oh,
comment.
okay.
John Trainer.
Good evening, Mayor Crane, members of the council, residents here and at home. How do you like summer so far? Anyway, I've read a few contracts in my time. And like John, I have been a consultant. I left the company I worked for over 20 years, and I enjoyed my time there. But when it was time to leave, I left. I formed a company. I bought professional liability insurance, and I consulted for not only members of the insurance community, but also telecommunication companies, banks, and brokerage companies. So I didn't go back to my company, even though they made that offer, because of professional integrity. There is such a thing as professional integrity. And I didn't realize that Councilperson Amoruso had a JD. But with all due respects to our town attorney, it was pretty clear when I read this document who put the framework together. I know who put the legalese around it, but I know who put the framework around it. And I'll tell you, going back to 2009, when Gary was appointed by then Mayor Wayne Fulcher, I looked at the contract and I questioned it during the approval process. And at that time, Tom Chenal was the town attorney. And I asked why there was no termination for cause section in the contract. I never received an answer. But what I did see was a severance of $200,000 in that contract. No questions asked. Gary fired for whatever reason, $200,000. But I was interested to see how this contract essentially had a way around that. And the way around that is, well, although the hours have changed, when I did the math on this, it turned out that a 12-month, an annualized arrangement would cost the town over $250,000. That's a pretty hefty sum. Now, I did hear that we're changing the number of hours, but if you look at that, that sort of covers the original severance agreement. I'm also concerned that the indemnification process here is overly generous. I didn't see anything about prior acts. I hope that doesn't make it into the contract, because I think that's a fruitful field to plow. 1976, there was a movie called Network. I don't know if you all remember that. I used to watch that movie over and over again. And one of the best lines that came out of that movie, you'll know it. I'm mad as hell, and I'm not going to take it anymore. I'm not mad as hell, but I'm pretty ticked off. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, John. Les Hardy.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council members. My name is Les Hardy. I used to practice law. It's been about 10 years since I retired. I did general civil litigation, and I saw a lot of contracts and a lot of consulting contracts. I think this is a tempest in a teapot. I think it's really easy to solve this problem to make it very clear that Gary Neese is not an employee. You should simply add language to the introduction to say something like, from time to time, members of the town council may ask Gary Neese for information, advice, whatever, Mayor Crane, your language was advice and information, and request consultation from him. That makes it very clear that he has no active, positive work, that he's simply responding to whatever the town asks for. That takes him clearly out of any category of being an employee, that he's simply responding to requests for information by the town. I think that's the way to handle this problem. I can't imagine that he needs to have an LLC or insurance to answer a question if somebody calls him up on Thursday and says, how did you do this 2 years ago? And you have a 2-minute conversation and that's it. That's my suggestion.
Okay, thank you. Sharon Smith.
Sharon Smith. I worked in a prior life, I ran the back office and was chief economist for the Labor Relations Group in corporate headquarters in AT&T. When I transitioned from that role to another role supporting 3 profit centers and a cost center in corporate strategy and development, I had been doing the job singularly in labor relations. I was replaced with a team who had far more years of service at AT&T than I did, but it worked in local bargaining. More than a year after I left, I got frequent calls from that team who I knew well, simply asking for information. What did this mean? How was this done? When was this done? It's difficult under those circumstances to forecast in advance what the questions will be. They were simply informational, and I was supporting the transition. When I subsequently left AT&T for a position at Princeton University, they did not call me anymore, simply because I no longer was within the umbrella of confidentiality for the corporation. But what I'm saying is, no matter how qualified the replacement, and my replacements knew a lot more about some contractual issues than I did, and no matter how long the individual, the transition has been there, that has been ongoing, one cannot predict in advance what question may come up. And I see this contract as simply allowing for clarification on that information without abusing Gary's
Okay, thank you. So we have no more public comments. And I would just open up to the council again for,
I would say that, based on what I've heard from Cheryl and Les, is that we could say, from time to time, town staff may contact the consultant to provide advice and information to the town on an as-needed basis. Full stop.
yeah, I would agree with that. Okay, that's,
Do we need to call him a consultant, or do we say that as a former employee, that we can call
call
him
him a
from?
consultant.
Call him a con-
Okay,
You hire the LLC, not the person. That's the way.
okay, well, we're not,
We'll figure that out.
we can turn that
figure
over
that
to
out.
someone who knows much more than, certainly more than I do. So Dennis,
Right.
I see you writing furiously.
I was following from time to time, the town may
Thank you.
contact the consultant on an as-needed basis for advice,
And information.
and information.
Can you just use his name and not use the word consultant?
Yeah, I like keeping it simple. I mean, we're overthinking this.
Dennis, what do you say to that?
Yeah, from time,
It's too hard.
You can call your LLC anything you want.
from time to time, the town may contact Gary.
But also,
So, Dennis, can we just leave the word consultant in there, or do we need to change it? Please, we've got to have some, I know we're all experts here, but we all have
We can
ideas, as
still-
I
mean, I
do,
think we can just
but let's
we
just
can-
hear
we-
from
we
the
can-
attorney.
keep the professional service agreement as is, but, I mean, I think the agreement says he's called consultant during the agreement. If we want to call him Gary, we can make that switch pretty easily, but it's still going to be a
Is
professional
there any
services
point to
agreement.
changing it to Gary from the consultant?
Whatever you want to do, Mayor.
I would leave it the same. I
Okay.
mean,
Okay, so from time to time, the town may contact the consultant on an as-needed basis for advice and information.
Okay. And then I had suggested
No, the other two changes you suggested were, the non-litigation period in 2.1 would be 6 months, the litigation period would be 12 months, and then in 4.3, weekly billable hours shall not exceed 10 hours a week unless improved by the mayor and the town administrator.
So how do we include pending advice from an auditor or whoever's going to?
You can just say that, Mayor, we can bring it back. That can be the direction from council if they want to approve the agreement with these three changes we've talked about, and then say prior to the agreement, prior to full execution of the agreement, that we run it by our audit group and find out if there's any additional changes they want to see in the agreement.
So if there are changes that they want to see, do we need to then bring it back to council for
Right,
those changes?
As long as they're
Okay.
not stylistic.
So if they're
If there's
okay,
substantive changes, we'll bring it back to council.
so if they're okay with the way it's written right now with these changes, then we could execute the agreement and allow Kristen to talk to Gary without waiting a month.
Right.
Okay.
the other question I have is, where is the money coming from? Because our budget is set, it's been allocated, we don't have a new budget till July, so at the way you're writing it now, the minimum would be around 65,000. That's a big contract, so where are you getting the funds from?
She's saying if it was the maximum.
The maximum, 10, which, and it could be greater than that, which everyone's agreed to. Plus, it's gonna be
Okay.
his money for the litigation.
So maybe
So
the treasurer, maybe the treasurer
It's
can
not in our
answer.
budget. How do we allocate the funds?
As treasurer, I can answer that question. There is something called salary savings as a result of Mr. Neese's retirement. There will be a salary savings as a result of that position. To address the general concern about possibly using $65,000 of Mr. Neese's time, I would like to assure the council that my 30 years of public service in New York City and the city of Glendale will certainly provide me with a very strong position on how we operate here in Carefree, and that I do not anticipate calling Gary, but very rarely, and I think that the council made an excellent statement. The historical piece that is lost with losing an employee of 24 years and an administrator of 16 years, the institutional knowledge. You know, we say a lot that people are replaceable, right? We can replace people. Yes, we can replace people, but if we have the opportunity to still have the advantage of institutional knowledge, we should use that. But rest assured that it is not my intention to call Gary on a regular basis to ask for that institutional knowledge. A $65,000 expense for this contract will certainly not happen, and I will monitor the contract regularly to make sure that it doesn't, considering that the only two people that can contact Mr. Neese are myself and the mayor, and I don't think the mayor intends to use that much time either. So rest assured, Councilmember Roth and council members, that that certainly isn't the intent of this. It's to be able to tap into that institutional knowledge if in fact we need it. Councilmember Amoroso made a wonderful statement. There are some things, even in my town clerk job, that it takes me sometimes weeks to figure out the history, because our history is 40 years back. So I think that having access to someone who had 24 years of that history could be helpful to us in the future, but certainly not a necessity, and only to be used for very specific purposes, as Councilmember Roth has said. We can change that scope. I have no concern with that. The mayor and I can sit down and figure out exactly when we say advice and information and define what that advice and information would be. So thank you for the opportunity to address the item, council.
Any other comments from the council? So hearing none, I would ask for a motion to approve the professional services agreement with the following changes. I might need some help here.
Okay, first change is in section 1.2. It would be changed to say, from time to time, the town may contact the consultant on an as-needed basis for advice and information, and the rest of the paragraph would be gone. That's the first change. The second change is in section 2.1, that the non-litigation period will be changed from 12 months to 6 months, and the litigation period will have a 12-month period on it. The last change is on section 4.3, where the weekly billable hours shall not exceed 10 hours a week. Those are the three changes.
And there's a stipulation on regarding the audit.
And council's gonna give us direction to, after these changes are made, have the agreement reviewed by our auditors to make sure that they don't see any additional changes they'd like made to the agreement. If there are substantive changes, we'll bring them back to council.
Okay.
Okay, so motion to approve the professional services agreement with the following changes from, on section 1.2, scope of services. From time to time, town staff may contact the consultant on an as-needed basis for advice and information, striking the rest of that paragraph. On 2.1 in the term, we're looking at a change to non-litigation hours, or time period 6 months, litigation 1 year. And on 4.3, we're reducing 19 hours down to 10 hours. And then we are also pending the execution of the agreement until an auditor reviews and makes sure that we are consistent with IRS codes.
We entertain a second?
Second.
Okay, before we vote, any other comments from the council? So hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Okay, very good, thank you. And thank you for all in the audience who participated. Item 4 on the agenda is current events. So we have a few current events. It's election season, so we have 3 council and a mayor position that are up for election. And candidate packets are available in Town Hall. Signed petitions are due by March 23rd, so roughly 3 weeks less. Community conversations, we're going to get together February 13th, Friday, 9 to 11, during the farmer's market. I'm sorry, yeah, March. So that, I'll be there. Councilmember Diane Roth and Vice Mayor Cheryl Croyer will join me. Last month, we talked about the zoning code update. And so we opened the window until the 25th of February for folks to step forward and apply to be on a working group, an advisory group to move that forward. So we had a number of applicants, and Stacy will make selections and announcements probably this week. Strategic plan. So last year we had a strategic plan. We put it together. First time we formally did that. It's something that should be renewed every year or reviewed every year and updated. So on Tuesday, March 12th at 2 p.m., the council will get together in a workshop and update the plan. So what does that mean? Well, we figure out what was done that was on the plan. If there's things on there that need to be modified, we'll modify them. Maybe there's things that should be taken off the plan. Maybe there's things that should be added to the plan. So it'll be a good discussion.
Mayor?
Yes.
Just, it's a Thursday.
It's a oh, yes, I'm
Thursday,
sorry.
March 12th.
Okay, thank you.
Just for clarification.
Thank you. And we'll publish that and push it out so folks know what's going on. So there's a lot of activities in town in March, so I'm not going to go through them all. If you go to our website, you can figure it out. You'll see them. You go to our newsletter. But there's 2 I want to highlight. One is Carefree Park has something called Sonoran Safari on Saturday, March 21st, on the state trust land. So you go to their website, you get the details. And then Thunderbirds will be here March 27th through the 29th for their 31st Carefree Wine and Fine Arts and Wine Festival. And lastly, we do this every spring and fall. We get the firefighters. We do caffeine with the firefighter. Sit down and talk with them. So this time we're doing a little bit different. You're invited to the firehouse for pancakes. This will be cool. So it's called Flapjacks and Fire Trucks. April 4th, 9 to 11. Orange juice, pancakes, and coffee. Tour the firehouse. Check out the truck. It's great. You got kids, grandkids. Bring them along. And it's a slightly different environment than we usually do this. You ask them about lock boxes and CPR and Firewise and whatever's on your mind. Snake removal. So it'll be a fun day. So April 4th, Saturday, 9 to 11. And then looking ahead, on April 16th, we have a CPR class from 6 to 8 p.m. So what we're doing there is we're mixing up the times, right? So instead of doing these all on Saturday or all on some morning during the week, here we're doing one on April 16th in the evening. Does anyone else have any other current events? Okay, great. So hearing none, that'll close current events. Item number 5, review, discussion, and approval of fiscal year 2024-25 restated financial reports from the audits. I'll turn this over to the town treasurer.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. First, some housekeeping items on this. There were 2 typos that when I was reviewing the item today, I realized. February, a short month, right? So on the very first page, you'll find that in the second paragraph, we indicate that you approved our audit, our comprehensive financial audit report. The actual date was February 3rd of 2026. It was not January 6th of 2026. I have corrected the memo for the file and will attach the agenda. Our second correction is in the the fourth paragraph. The first sentence says June of 2005. That's taken us back quite a few years, so that will be corrected to June of 2025. That memo will go on file, obviously, with our financial documents, and also be posted to the agenda in its updated
Yeah,
form.
That would have been pre-Gary.
Yeah. Okay, so now on to the item itself. So at our last council meeting in February, you did approve the audit and the restatement of the fund balance through the combined trial balance. So what happens is we adjust the June 2025 balance, fund balance, based on the auditor's findings. In doing that, that has that cascading effect and requires us to change the July through November combined trial balances, which were issued to you already in previous council meetings. Tonight's action is to approve those reinstated balances so that they become part of the record. You will be seeing the combined trial balance for December and January in our April meeting, as we are now being able to be caught up. Part of that was having to restate the others to accurately reflect what the auditors had asked us to make changes to. Are there any questions I can answer for you, council?
Okay, thank you. So hearing no questions, I would entertain a motion to approve the fiscal year 2024-2025 restated financial reports from the audit.
Motion to approve the fiscal year 2024-25 restated financial reports from the audit of June of 2025 and July through November 2025.
Any comments before we vote? So hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Agenda item number 6, review, discussion, and approval of an employment agreement appointing Kristen Cray as town administrator for the town of Carefree pursuant to Carefree Code Section 3-11. So just to review the process that got us to be where we are, the appointment to appoint Kristen Cray as our town administrator. So we discussed the position, or we had applicants internally talk to us, and then we had a full external recruitment effort that was managed through the Maricopa Association of Governments. And they provided a professional, neutral, and unbiased process because we wanted to take it out of town hall. And they were just, they were great. Their HR director basically ran it for us. We gave them a job description. They posted it in several places, including the Arizona League of Cities and Town website, the ICMA website, our town website, the American Planning Association website. And we created a committee internally, small working group, Lon Johnson, Colleen Skirty, and myself. So we did initial interviews of the qualified candidates. We distilled that down to 2 finalists, an external and Kristen Cray. The whole entire town council interviewed both of them. And then we came to a consensus that Kristen Cray was our candidate to be appointed. So a little background on Kristen. Excuse me, I need to read this, but Kristen brings an extensive municipal leadership experience, financial expertise, and executive-level administrative experience. Her career spans multiple decades in public sector leadership, including senior roles with the city of Glendale, Arizona, where she served as an executive and department-level positions within the city manager's office, budget, and finance, city council administration, police technical services, grants, and special projects management. She served in consulting and executive compliance roles in the private sector and has taught graduate-level leadership and MBA courses. She has a deep expertise in municipal governance, financial stewardship, organizational restructuring, and strategic planning. So she brings a proven record of leadership and a deep understanding of the town of Carefree, having worked here for a year, and our community. And she'll do just a fantastic job for us, I'm convinced. So I would open it up to council for comment.
Since I was on that committee, we did a lot of work. We interviewed internal and external candidates, as Mayor Crane said. And I think we we came to a consensus, and I think we are extremely lucky that we had someone on our bench that has the strength of Kristen, has the knowledge, the background. I was very impressed with everything, and I think it's just, it gives us so much, the fact that you've been here a year. It's not like you have training wheels on. You've seen what happens, and there were great external candidates, but at the end of the day, we're very fortunate to have you, and you know, your credentials and your expertise are just paramount. Thank you.
Thank you.
Comments or questions? Or?
Yeah, I'd like to just second what Lon said, that Kristen was very impressive, both in the interviews and in the times I've worked with her over the last year. And when it came down to it, it's always better to hire and elevate internally. It's good for the staff. It gives them upward mobility in the future. And I feel she's an asset to us and that she'll work very well in this transition period and onward, and especially with the existing staff. Thank
Yeah,
you.
agreed.
I just want to say how lucky we are to have someone with her bench strength and knowledge who can slip right into that role without any problem or loss.
Yeah, I agree with everything I've heard. I've enjoyed the year with you, and we've attended some conferences together, and I think you work very well with the staff, and there's a comfortable interaction that I think is very good. So.
Well, we were lucky when we hired Kristen because she was overqualified to be a town clerk.
Right.
And so, you know, it was I think it's going to be a very smooth transition with Kristen taking the lead role.
It's going to be, yeah, we're exactly right. We're very fortunate, and you've proven what you can do. We've seen it at the water company, when after Greg left, how you manage the front office, and we see it in town hall every day for the past year.
Thank you.
Done very well. So if there's no other comments from the council, we have one public comment from Mr. John Trainer.
I just wanted to congratulate Kristen on the promotion to town administrator. From everything I've heard and from personal experience so far, I think we really struck gold here. And my only advice or caution to you in your new role, I read your contract as well. And unfortunately, unlike some of the others, yours does have a termination for cause section in it. And I just point out one thing. It says that you can be terminated for cause for committing a felony or a serious misdemeanor. And since a number of people in town have been already charged with a serious misdemeanor, I would advise you against hanging any temporary signs in your cubicle.
Shana, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trainer.
Okay, so we have no other public comment slips. So I would, any other comments from council before we move on to making a motion?
I just want to say that it's the first time I totally agree with Mr. Trainer's comments. Thank you.
Okay. So I would ask for a motion to approve the employment contract for Kristen Cray as town administrator for the town of Carefree pursuant to Carefree Town Code, section 3-1-1.
Motion to approve Resolution 2026-03, employment agreement between the town of Carefree, Arizona, and the town administrator.
Second.
Comments? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passed unanimously. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Would you like to say anything?
Yes.
You're welcome
thank
to.
You.
3 minutes.
You got it, 3 minutes. You know what, I'm still on Mr. Nimsky's time. Let me stop that. Oh, Mr. Trainer's time, thank you.
Should I get up again?
I'm gonna buzz out on that, yeah. Okay, this will be very brief, but I just wanted to say, Mayor, members of the council, our residents, and our staff, and our community partners as well, I am deeply honored and grateful for the opportunity to serve as our town administrator for the town of Carefree, where I've spent the past year getting to know you all and learning about this lovely town. Carefree is a remarkable community. I have learned that. We are fiscally strong, we are civically engaged, and we are grounded in a deep respect for our 40 years of history. To be entrusted with helping to shape that legacy, to me, is both humbling and energizing. For those who may not know me, as the mayor said, I have over 30 years' experience in public service. He read off some of my titles and all those things. I think what's most important for you all to know is what my leadership philosophy is. And it's really grounded in 3 principles. The first is fiscal stewardship. That is, long-term sustainability for our town matters the most to me. Strategic capital planning, disciplined budgeting, and transparent reporting. They're not just simply something that we do as exercises. They are the foundation of our public trust. Second is operational excellence. We have an awesome team here in Carefree. That was part of my decision-making in this process, to inherit such a wonderful, dedicated group of employees has made this even a more energizing opportunity for me. I believe that operational excellence includes clear processes, accountability, and strong internal controls that allow our staff to perform at their highest level and allow council to make their best informed decisions. And thirdly is partnership. Effective municipal government depends on collaboration between our mayor, our council, our staff, our residents, our businesses, and our regional partners in order for us to be successful in long-term sustainability. My role here is to facilitate, mediate, implement our council's policies with professionalism, neutrality, and integrity. Carefree is not static, it is ever evolving, but it must evolve deliberately, strategically, and in alignment with community values. And I support the council in that highly. I want to thank you for your confidence. I am looking forward to the work ahead and to continuing to serve this extraordinary community.
Okay, well, thank you. Have some, yeah, it's great having you on board, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes agenda item number 6. Number 7, approval of resolution 2026-04, adopting an intergovernmental agreement between the town of Carefree and the Flood Control District of Maricopa County to identify and define responsibilities for the design, rights-of-way acquisition, utility relocations, construction management, and operation and maintenance of the whitewash at Leisure Lane Culvert Replacement Project. Mr. C.J. DiMaggio, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I'm pleased to speak with you about this evening about an opportunity for the town to partner with the Flood Control District to fund the repair of a very important. Put your mic up.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Is this on?
You may have to turn it on.
I want to get your presentation. The laptop time now.
I guess I was more soft-spoken than everybody else. My goodness.
Okay, great.
Do you see it up there? It's
Yes.
not showing up here yet.
And we see it here.
Okay. Okay.
Just cycle the monitor on and off.
There we go. Well, I'll get started. Thank you again, Mayor, members of council. Happy to speak with you this evening. I think this is an important project. This is aiming to fund the repair of a very important culvert in our town. Thank you. Under the SPAP, or Small Project Assistance Program, grant program offered by the Flood Control District, the district will fund up to 75% of eligible design and construction costs for a culvert replacement project that has been estimated to cost about $426,000. So that translates to a cost share of about $320,000 in county funds, district funds, and $106,000 in town funds. Some background about this project and why you're hearing about it now. There are about 123 culverts identified in the Carefree Drainage Master Study that was prepared by the Flood Control District in 2003. About 2/3 of those are in or under public streets and are consequently maintained by the town's public works staff. Culverts are basically where desert washes cross under our streets. Like any piece of infrastructure, these culverts require regular repair and maintenance. They're subject to weathering, damage from the elements or from traffic accidents, and they sometimes get crushed by heavy or overloaded vehicles traveling our streets. When they no longer work as they were intended to, culverts can cause stormwater to back up and even flood streets and residences. That is what is happening on Leisure Lane and Sentinel Rock Estates, unfortunately. A culvert under Leisure Lane that was probably built in the early 1980s, before the town's incorporation, it has been crushed and completely buried by sediment, causing stormwater to escape the wash and damage streets and private property. Of those 230 plus culverts I mentioned, if you were to pick only one to repair or replace, this would be the one. And the reason for that is, of all those 200 plus culverts, this is the only one in the town of Carefree that has probably resulted in structural flooding over the years. Structural flooding, that is flooding of homes and businesses, is the worst kind of flooding. It's a clear and present threat to public safety and health. It's common in certain parts of the country where homes are in floodplains or close to rivers. It's rare in Carefree because most of its homes were built on ridges or the high points of large lots, precisely in order to take advantage of views, leaving the washes mostly intact. So we're quite fortunate in that. Nuisance of flooding of streets is something we're pretty used to here. We can shrug it off by and large. It's an inconvenience when a wash runs over a street after a strong summer thunderstorm, but as most of our residents know, it's temporary. They know that turn around, don't drown, and not to drive through running water. And after 15 or 20 minutes or so, the wash quiets down and you go about your business. No harm done. That's not the case, unfortunately, at Whitewash on Leisure Lane. Because the culverts there no longer work properly, stormwater in that wash can't find its way under the street. So it jumps out of the wash and instead flows down Leisure Lane, where it tries to find its way downhill. And in so doing, it can do some real damage to properties downhill. So I'd like to share with you some photos to give you some perspective on why this is so important. Great timing there that it just showed up. Thanks, Kristen. So you have, this is the view from the south. And I see this on my daily commute. It's really not, thank you. Wonderful, you're wonderful, wonderful. It's a split personality mountain. It's only Black Mountain on one half of it, on the left. On the right, it's not. And it's a completely different geology. It's really fascinating. On the right, on the east, you have weathered granite, nice blonde weathered granite that manifests itself as these beautiful outcroppings in the boulders and elsewhere. On the left, it's completely different. It's a metamorphic schist. It's like a sedimentary rock. It's like a mudstone. So it's very platy and shaly and angular. That'll come up in a minute here. This is a typical culvert in town. And this looks alarming because you can see that the culverts that are there, they're kind of buried, almost totally buried. But these actually work. And they work because as the water in a flood event starts speeding up, it starts opening its way down through those culverts. And it flushes out all that dirt until the rain event stops, the flood stops, and it fills back up again. But when the stormwater can't see those holes to get into it to start that process of washing it out, that's when you have problems. And that's why we have a problem because of that unique geology at Leisure Lane. This is Whitewash, and I don't know if there's anyone from beautiful Sentinel Rock Estates here today, but Whitewash is so named by the HOA there, and I think it's a wonderful practice they have in that neighborhood of bringing awareness to their washes. These are tongue-in-cheek names: Whitewash, Whitewash. There's one called Hogwash. There's one called It's a Wash. There's probably several others I haven't seen, but they've signed them, again, to bring awareness in their community of the importance of washes, the many services that washes provide. So Whitewash is, if you'd have to look really closely, because this is not a great photo because it's in the shade. Under that sign, you see some of these dark rocks that are that west slope rather of Black Mountain. They're really dark, jagged, angular rocks that you could almost make a tile a roof out of. They're just very interlocking. They're not like the nice, soft, round granite boulders you see on the other side of Black Mountain. This is another view of it. Now here we're actually standing in Leisure Lane. We're looking upstream toward the mountain. And what you see here is all the gravel that spills directly onto the street. There is no culvert there anymore. I mean, the culvert is buried. It's buried about 2 or 3 feet deep at least. And so every drop of water that's flowing out of Whitewash flows onto Leisure Lane. Leisure Lane is not designed to be that kind of a conveyance. It's not a culvert. It's not a waterway. It's not a wash itself. So when water gets onto the street, it has nowhere to go but down the street. And that's not what we want to happen. So this is where it all started. 2014 was a very active monsoon year. It was actually also a very wet winter. So after the winter, the town realized, hey, we need to clear up these culverts because there's always sediment accumulating behind them. So this is on the south end, looking north across Leisure Lane toward the mountain. And you see kind of see a few things going on here. Staff hard at work trying to clear those culverts, the 2-barrel culverts, 2 36-inch culverts, corrugated metal pipe. It's kind of deformed. You can see it's kind of stretched and pointy. Corrugated metal pipe also has ridges in it. So when those ridges, they're not smooth, obviously, so they catch those jagged edges of those sharp rocks that are coming down, tumbling down Whitewash, and they just interlock even more and jam up and cause it to back up. It's a really unfortunate situation. No sooner had they cleared that up in July than a serious series of storms over a couple days hammered the area. The valley was hard hit throughout the summer of 2014, both in August and September. And this is the house just next door, downstream, downhill of the culvert, and some severe damage to their driveway. You wouldn't want to be standing there when whatever floodwaters came into your yard and did that. If the floodwaters can hurt a driveway like that, they could hurt people like that, which is why structural flooding is not a good thing ever. There was also, I do not have photos of it, there are allegations by another house to the west of actual structural flooding, of actual water entering from the street, from Leisure Lane into their property. So that was a source of some consternation and concern throughout the town. In response to that, the town hired a consultant in just the following year, I think 2015, and through 2017 to undertake this work. So an improvement. So the town invested about $60,000 in the design of an improved culvert at this location. But probably because of competing budgetary priorities and because the flood control district's SPAP used to be considerably harder for municipalities like Carefree to qualify for, the plans did not go out to construction. In May of 2025, I submitted an application for funding under the revised, liberalized SPAP program. On October 29th, the district let us know that the project had been deemed eligible for SPAP funding. And on February 11th, the district provided the draft IGA that is now before you. Under SPAP guidelines, the terms of the standard IGA are non-negotiable in order to facilitate rapid district and local agency approvals. No authorization for expenditure is requested at the current time with approval of this IGA, but I did mention to you the rough budgetary figures, the cost estimate that was provided in our application. If you approve the IGA and it is then approved by the Board of Directors of the Flood Control District, which is also the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, I will work with Flood Control District engineering staff to develop final construction drawings and specifications that are fully up to date with their current standards. The plans were already shovel-ready in 2017, but because almost 10 years have passed and some flood control standards have undoubtedly changed somewhat, the district will probably request some minor reworking of those plans and specifications before we go to bid. Then probably in late summer or early fall, I will come back to you with a request that you award a construction contract to the lowest responsible bidder and a request for a proposal solicitation, with the construction hopefully spanning the fall of 2026 and the winter of 2027. That's it. Happy to take any questions you might have.
Okay, well, nice presentation. So one question, why will this construction work produce a better culvert than we have today? Going back to the original culvert, not a culvert that's filled in, but. Why
Yes.
will this behave better?
No, thank you,
Why
Mayor.
does this solve the problem?
That's a good question. The design incorporates more modern standards than were accessible, used by the designers of the 40 years prior. And it's a much larger culvert that is designed to be a 4-foot by 8-foot box culvert, a reinforced concrete culvert, so much bigger, much more substantial. It will be consequently, you can almost walk through that. So it will be easier for our staff, our public works staff, to manually clean it out when it does, on the rare occasion it does get congested with sedimentation. So it's much more accessible, much more larger capacity to convey those stormwater flows.
So it's a box culvert, doesn't have pipes.
No pipes. We're done with pipes.
Smooth edges.
Smooth, yeah, that's concrete.
Okay, any other questions or comments from the council? Okay, very good. Good. Thank you, CJ.
Thank you.
So I would entertain a motion to approve Resolution 2026-04, a resolution of the mayor and the council of the town of Carefree, Arizona, adopting an intergovernmental agreement between the Flood Control District of Maricopa County and the town of Carefree for the design, rights-of-way acquisition, utility relocations, construction management, and operation and maintenance of the whitewash at Leisure Lane culvert replacement project.
So motion to approve Resolution 2026-04, adopting an intergovernmental agreement between the town of Carefree and the Flood Control District of Maricopa County.
Second.
Okay, second from Mr. Miller. Any comments before we vote? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. And thank you, CJ. And nice job getting that grant from the Flood Control District. Item number 8, market position analysis and needs assessment. Steve Propopek.
Mayor, Council, thank you. Congratulations, Kristen. We look forward to working with you. A lot of stuff to do. Let me make sure that I can get. So, as you were all aware, and I wanted to thank you all for participating in the workshop and all the residents that participated in the workshop, as well as the P&Z EDAD members that are here, as we discussed the position strategy a few weeks ago. And this is important as we start to look at how we really see, and we could use the words vision, we use the words position, we use the word branding. They kind of all start to blend together at some point. But the whole purpose of this exercise is when we look at how we envision a town and the product we provide to a customer. And it really does look at the product itself, kind of how that fits in with what we're trying to accomplish with that product, who the target market is, and how we position that to get the types of customers we want, to get the results that we want. And that's where positioning comes in. And then it leads to us being able to effectively promote the town to get the types of investment that we want to get. It leads us to a position where we want to get the types of tenants and the investment, and those things start to fall together. And at the end of the day, the whole thing we're trying to accomplish is a value proposition that best serves the customers. And those customers are, truly what we define as, it starts with our residents, and then how are those residents supported by the other customers that come in to provide the types of retail services that we'd like to see. And so I just want to say this all goes through, and I know we discussed, Mayor, you announced that we're going to be having a strategic plan process. And as we go through these, this can be this presentation and the next presentation, this really kind of plays into the strategic plan. And so the things that we work on in economic development really are derived from primarily through that strategic plan for any given time period that you, as council, want economic development to provide focus on. And so as we look at this was to go ahead and do this particular analysis. And really it's just provide the framework so we can continue these kinds of conversations and give the council and the staff and everybody involved, even the community, better information about where we stand and what we're trying to accomplish, in particular with how we are looking at, in this case, retail for the town center, and how we are market competitive and where we stand with the rest of the greater Phoenix area. It also, the other part of it is we do have the redevelopment plan. And so as we look at the strategic plan, we'll look at initiatives, but as we look at the redevelopment plan, and I know Mr. Nipsky had brought it up at one point, that there's times where we have to evaluate that plan as well. and we look at the implementation steps and what have we completed and what do we need to maybe amend and adjust as we look at that plan. This helps frame that as well. So I just wanted to let you know that's one of the things we need to think about. And then what I wanted to do is I provided you the report that came from the consultant, and I don't want to go detailed through the report. You have it. And really, again, this is just information for you guys to help make the best decisions. So I wanted to get this out to you and to the public and everybody else. So as you go into that strategic planning session, if there's any questions that you have or any additional information that you're going to want from the staff to help you frame better decisions moving forward is what you want us to do. That's what this is what this is about. And so what we kind of came to is really we need to focus in this primary market. And then it was interesting. One of the things I thought was very thoughtful was making sure that we really grab not only the current demographics, what's projected and census information and all that, but to really start looking at more in depth on what home builders and what we can anticipate the type of customers that are going to be building homes or even coming to Carefree, and looking at that as we go out into the future. The Pima Road corridor and the North Scottsdale corridor is really going to help drive what that is, and really focus in on this market here as to being the driver of the type of retail that we like to see in a particular area. And and again, I'm just not going to read through all of these. You can see I really integrate well in this. And I do want to say that the one common theme that really I heard, maybe, and I want to get some of your thoughts as well, is this patio-driven, pedestrian, with shade and integration of the gardens. I mean, really start to put all the pieces that we have together and not look at them as individual pieces, but how they collectively come together and create really what the product is that we have. And I think we've done a lot of investment in things, and we're getting ready to put the signage in. It's time that we start working with some of the private property owners, and you're already seeing some new investment come in and some changes. And some of these changes may be painful at some level, or and we can already see that we've lost this one on Arts League, which is sad, and we're going to try to find another location for them. But you're seeing new investment come in, and these new investors are looking to get market rents from some of these buildings, which ultimately could be to our benefit as we're trying to develop more higher end retail. And so that's really the way that we're you're just going to have to start seeing that as it comes in, and getting fresh investment into the community is going to be important. This was the proposed optimal position statement. I know when Heather read this, it didn't seem like anybody had any real issue with what was proposed here. I actually think it hits the nail on the head pretty good, is what we're really trying to accomplish here. And again, I'm not asking you to adopt these things today, but generally speaking, if this is something we're going to go through and we start looking at the future of trying to change some of these documents that do drive the town, that we start looking to potentially incorporate these types of statements in those. And then again, these are the recommended areas for follow-up. And so as you get and go into your discussions about what you want to accomplish over these next 2 years, from an economic development perspective, this is really kind of how I see what I've heard and what we feel like where we're at in these next steps. And again, I think that a big component of this is we're starting to see a really good, strong engagement from the private ownership. And we're starting to see that turn to where they really want to focus on the same goals that we have as a town to create quality retail. And that's going to be a key piece to this. And one of them is really this idea of bids and enhanced municipal districts. And I know they talked about those, and those are things that we haven't really talked about in depth. But if there's information you want on those programs, I'll provide those to the council as you start to go into this process. And then we can kind of have that conversation. And if there's something you want to discuss in the strategic planning process, we can do that as well. And I know maybe Dennis or Nick, if they're going to be available, can chime in, and maybe from a legal perspective of how those things get structured and formed, and how they operate, and if there's any questions regarding to that. And so it's really this next step. And I think we're in a great place, for where we're trying to head as a town, and particularly with the town center and the retail that we're trying to create here. And then the one thing I also want to get into is this promotional strategy. And I know Councilman Johnson, it's one of the things that's really high on your list, that we really need to start hitting the ground hard on that. And I totally agree with you. And I think we're in that spot now where we start getting clarity on the things that we want for the A space, clarity on the things that are going to drive what's going to go into like a CVS, and then clarity for the types of tenants that we really want to see that come into the town center. And that clarity comes from being able to have a product for them to go into. And that's the other part of it. And I think that's when you listen to what Amy and what Heather were telling you, it really does. We've got to get this product, and it's on both private sector and these partnership pieces, that's going to allow the facilitation for the types of tenants we want to see come into these. And so when we're going out and marketing these types of opportunities, we can bring those types of tenants in. And so I think we're in a really good spot, and the time is right for us to really start focusing on that investment and development, which is one of the things we'll talk about in the next agenda item, which is the town hall site. And one of the other things they said is really you got to control what's within your scope of control. And that's really where you can make the best change, or the most impactful changes is what you have the ability to control. And so these are the things, when we start looking here, that we have the ability to influence or control. And so, any questions at this point, or any comments?
The only thing I would say is, prior to our strategic workshop, that if you could provide us with, like, no longer than one page, the mechanics of how you do a business improvement district, an enhanced municipal district, and a retail overlay district, that would be helpful for that discussion.
Okay, I'll put that together for you, Mayor. And then the other part of it is we have the retail overlay district. That was the other part they talked about, and that's going to, I think, Stacy, I know she's going to be working on that as it relates to the zoning update, and so that's something that we'll just continue to all work together on to make sure that we, focus on making something like that effective to what we can as far as within the confines of the law.
Okay. Okay, so is this, so you're done, this is your spiel on
Yep.
agenda number 8, okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up from our workshop, so you had the information, public has the information.
I wasn't sure you were done.
Yep.
Okay, so any questions, comments from the council? I think we'll revisit this during the strategic workshops, and we'll move it forward. It's only a week, next week, so it's moving. Okay, that concludes item number 8. Number 9, the Town Hall redevelopment opportunity updates.
Yeah, and thanks, Mayor. And I wanted to include this as part of the conversation because the position stuff the analysis talks about things from a higher level, and it does bring it down. And one of the things that they did talk about, again, as I just mentioned, what are those things that are within our control? And I think there was a lot of good conversation around the town hall site about how we move forward on that. And there were different ideas. There's ideas about utilizing it for parking. There's ideas for utilizing it for, a restaurant. There's idea, do we kind of dip our toe in the water, or do we just blow it, knock it down and put a sign up that's for sale and figure out what we do at town hall? And I think that conversation did kind of move around. And so where we're at when we did the approval, it was really to kind of start this due diligence process on this. There was no assignment to economic development to move forward, to drive to an end result as far as an RFP at this point, or trying to find some solution or implement some solution. It was really to get you information that we can utilize to try to get to that next step, which is why I wanted to get this information in front of you before we go through the strategic planning process, so we can kind of look at how the council wants to take that next step. And when just for information, here's the site we're talking about. We did all the, we've already gone through the information as far as we reached out to the community, and I don't want to belabor where we got to now. But here's the site, just in case anybody is watching and isn't familiar with it. We're looking at the town hall site, and we also included Sunshine Way as a component to that. And one of the things I wanted to talk about is the last time we spoke, we didn't have any numbers, and it was kind of, what's this thing going to cost? What are the options, and how do they cost? And so I actually had a contractor come and bid out what it would cost to build this site here. And about 2.5, 3 years ago, when we first had to take a look at this, it was about $2 million, $2.5 million at most. That cost is gone up a lot, and we're probably looking at a $4 to $5 million project. And as we looked at what it would cost, potentially purchase a building, it really isn't anywhere close to that. And so as we start to look at costs for purchasing, we're probably going to be in that, $1 million to $1.5 million range if we were to buy something. That would be a direct acquisition of space that we could just offset. And I've already, as we looked at what our value is, our value to our town hall site, based on the appraisal we got, was about $875,000. And again, appraised values and what market values are can sometimes be a little bit different. So what we could get could be a little bit more than that, depending on how we work this out. And then what I've done is and you saw it in your packet, and I've rolled through, is I looked at various different options based on the feedback that we got. And so what I'll run through here is that we have restaurant only, a retail only option. I looked at then mixed use options. And then I looked at if we kept town hall on site. Let's say we had an office option where maybe we kept it there. Just kind of what that looks like from a coverage perspective, the amount of parking we would need and the development percentage of the site, which I kept it at about 90%. And 90% means how much of the area could be covered by both the parking and the building area. And that's because we have pretty generous setback requirements here, especially in the town center area where a lot of it is a zero lot line, but we have a 10-foot. And so it would allow us to utilize a larger piece of the land. But I want to say this also, just because we can develop all of it doesn't mean we have to. We can, if you look at a restaurant here, we can do up to 10,600 square feet of restaurant on this particular site based on how much land is available. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to do that. Maybe it's a 5,000 square foot restaurant and we utilize the rest of it to maybe incorporate a little bit more parking that helps with the rest of town center and our goals there. So there's a lot of things for us to consider as we move forward on how we want to move forward on this particular opportunity. And so when you start looking at the develop percentage, and then what I would try to do is look at what the estimated revenues are. And again, these estimates are going to be generalized estimates, and they're based on a lot of different factors. They're kind of like what's the general market mixed in with what do we kind of see in Carefree today, and then what could we potentially expect if something were to come in. And because that's kind of could be anywhere, depending on what type of user comes into that particular space, or what type of restaurant we'd be looking at, that could vary per square foot on those types of restaurants. And so what I tried to do is just generally use types of industry standards. I actually did talk to Amy and Heather about these numbers, and they felt they were pretty good to use in this generalized conversation. So what I'm not going to ask you is pick one of these or pick, these are things for us to start to explore. And as we get into the strategic planning process, I think it's what is it you want to then kind of proceed to go after, and that gives me the opportunity to say, okay, I'm going to vet these for you even further, and we'll get those further details.
So, quick interruption. So, are there any restaurants in Carefree, I'm not interested in names, but that approach $500 per square foot?
I don't want to get into specific restaurants. Some of our better restaurants do pretty well, and then it's also looking at some of the recommendations for restaurants that some of the council members or others have made. And I started looking at what their table turns are and what their revenues are. And so I try to blend those things in. But we have the opportunity to put a higher value restaurant in here based on revenue. We could do that. And at the same time, and this kind of goes to if you create more demand for restaurants in the area, and there's more demand for restaurant use, then obviously restaurant revenue is going to go up altogether. And so again, it's this balance of trying to find a way of presenting you something that is kind of between here and there, what we kind of have and what could be, and I try to find that balance in between there.
And same question on the retail. Is that something that's realized today?
Yeah, in our higher end stuff, it's higher. I think in our lower end stuff, it's pretty low. I think when we start looking at what our expectations are, and I start looking and talking with some of the retail development community who deals with retail, and I think this is a good number at this point for us to have a generalized conversation. Obviously, when we get into any kind of specific projects or details, we're going to have to, it's a whole different conversation about what specifics we are based on the types of users and the types of uses we want to see.
So, Council Member Roth, you have a comment about $250 per square foot retail?
Yes, I do. I know you're shocked by that, but I did some research. So in Scottsdale,
Your mic's out.
pardon? It's on. Oh, the little green light's on.
Oh.
Doesn't
couldn't hear
that
you.
mean it's?
Oh, there it is. Okay.
There it is. Okay, so in Scottsdale, there are 1,284 restaurants right now. 80% of all restaurants fail in the first 5 years. The average Arizona for a non-full service restaurant is $274 a square foot. For a full service restaurant, which is I assume what you would like here, the average is $250 to $325. Now, restaurants that do $5 million and up are not up here. There's no restaurant near us that does what you're projecting, which is in order to realize $159,000 in revenue, you've got to do $5 million. Not happening up here. It happens in Old Town and some restaurants in Phoenix. So these are not realistic numbers. If you go to the tax people and ChatGPT, my new favorite thing to use. So, you know, you've got to look at reality, but the failure rate, I mean, I was in high-end retail, which has the second highest failure rate. Restaurants have the first highest. So 80% failing in the first 5 years. In order to take town hall down, build a restaurant, it's 3 to 5 years to break even. So we're looking at 5 years, if you get rid of town hall, of no measurable income. So why aren't we focusing on bolstering our retail and looking at realistic restaurants for the town that exists, that we get a good mixture in our existing buildings?
Yeah, that's a good conversation. So let me roll through kind of, you know, so I looked at retail only. And then one of the other things I did, and you'll start going through here, is we looked at mixed use restaurant and retail to kind of show what those various different mixes could be based on whether or not it's heavier retail or heavier restaurant. And I'm glad you brought up that's the good discussion, right? This is what the direction we need is to what's the balance, what's the blend, what is the proper, what's the type, if we were going to go for a restaurant, what's the type of restaurant? I know you brought up White Chocolate Grill as an example at one point, and if you look at a White Chocolate Grill, they definitely do more than this. And so those are the types of numbers I was utilizing based on the commentary and all of the factors that I received. Was it could be anywhere from $300 or $200 to $1,000 a foot. And so when you start looking at that, if we have high expectations for our town and we feel that we can be a really competitive area in the restaurant market space, which I think we can, being near Desert Mountain and with all the growth that we're seeing in North Scottsdale, to set our sights low is the wrong thing to do. We need to set our sights, that's what they were saying, set your sights to where you think you should be as this higher end boutique type restaurant retail marketplace. And I think we have that, and we've got the bones for it. We've got some really good businesses and restaurants that we can build upon. And this is a great opportunity for us to completely set that tone. And the other part of it is, and I know I've had this conversation with Councilmember Miller, it's not even just the use. We have the opportunity to set the tone on the development, the types of shade, the type of pedestrian amenities, how we deal with parking. I mean, the fit and finish of the building. I mean, we have the opportunity here to do all this. So it's not just about X's and O's and numbers. There's a lot of factors that will drive, and what we're trying to do is be a catalyst for what we want to see within the town. And so is it the end-all, be-all silver bullet that's going to solve all of our problems? No, and it never was meant to be. What it is the catalyst in our ability to be the example of what we want the rest of this community to do. And we want investors to come in and see this town is serious about doing these types of things. And that's when you're going to see the bigger type investment come in. And that's where you're going to see the Scottsdale-esque or the types of businesses you really want to see are going to go, look, they're serious about wanting me here. They're serious about bringing my customers here. And, you know, and it's hard. You know, we spent a lot of time as a community for a lot of years trying to bring in tourists and tour buses and play off the sundial and the gardens and all that other stuff. And really what needs to drive this are the uses and users. And those things are the amenities that make the area special on top of the unique experience they get here from a retail or a restaurant environment.
So just from my perspective on this, I don't think you'll, as Diane said, you're not gonna ever pencil out, but the real home run would be you put something in really nice and it brings people up and the overall coverage improves. And, you know, we can argue about, will this place ever pencil out? I doubt it. At least for a while, it may. But I think it's the perception and it's what you want to do and it's what you want your town to look like. So I think you have to look at this as the whole, not as just a little piece of this. And if you look at the whole, it may be worth doing if we think so. I think we'd need to get a very interested high-end party to start the dance and do that. But I mean, I could see where you're going, and then I would just look for the most economical way to reposition town hall.
Yep.
But the other thing we have to look at is, in order for a high end to come in, you've got to elevate the existing town. To me, town hall would be down on the bottom of what we need to do. We've got Los Portales, we've got other parts. If you look at what's successful in our town, Spanish Village, very successful, very high per square foot. You go over to where Joe is, the tea room, the same thing, and she's elevated her part. So put the town together before you're spending $1 million+ on finding a place to put town hall. You're not coming out ahead. It's not a zero-sum game by taking it down. So you're spending money somewhere where that money should be spent elevating our town and really enforcing the existing buildings. Let's get that. And then you're not going to have to chase someone and try and convince them. They're going to want to come here if the town's been elevated.
Well,
We
I
have
would, I would
very-
just say that despite ourselves, Spanish Village is here and the English Rose Tea Room is here. And we could do, I think Lon's comments are spot on. And we can do improvements on the amenities that we have in our town in parallel. And we'll be fine.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can I just say that we have limited, just because we're a public entity, we can't spend more than a certain amount. And when you're looking at the facade program, you know, we have limited funds to do that. So we can't just help businesses with our town dollars freely. There are restrictions on that. But having said that, if it's gonna take, as people said, you know, years for this to come to fruition and generate revenue, you need to think about the fact that the state legislature is currently trying to take away our ability to collect groceries taxes. That's $175,000 or so that would be taken away from our budget. So it may sound like a small number, but that's real dollars. So if we got 159 in to offset that, that would be great. We lost our ability due to the legislation for collecting residential rental tax. That was, I think, 75 to 125. Don't quote me on that. But so we lost that. And now the final nail in the coffin is that they're trying to take away our ability to collect online sales tax, which is $472,000 that we collect a year. So what they're trying to do is, instead of having the town where the resident lives collect the sales tax, they're trying to give the town where the distribution center is to collect the sales tax. So that's another, you know, attack on our ability to generate revenue. So we always have to be prepared for this type of activity coming from the legislature, and every little bit helps.
And I would just to throw on the legislature taking your money away. So, you know, they're working on revamping the state income tax to align it with the federal laws. So that hit will be between $40,000 and $100,000, depending on how they settle. And of all the things we just talked about, that will happen. I mean, they're going to align it somewhere in that window, and we'll take a hit. So there's
Yeah, there's
stuff happening.
a handful of
There's-
legislation.
It is. It's like there's so many things going on. It's like there's town hall, yes, there's Los Portales, there's all these other buildings, and we need to be working on all of them at the same time. We can't just count and put everything in one basket, because if that doesn't work, right, we have to be touching all of the baskets that we can. We also have to be looking at the legislation. Everything that Councilman Amoroso said is true. The bill for the online sales tax, that is moving. It is moving quickly, and then you'd hope if it gets through both houses that the governor doesn't sign it. But that's a big chunk of money. And when you're a town that only generates sales tax revenue, if you're not looking at ways to continually fill that when the legislation is constantly trying to pull it away, then we're going to be in trouble. And we're a town that doesn't want a property tax. You're going to have a property tax, right? So we're fighting the legislature, but we also have to be looking at every opportunity that we have in town center to generate sales tax revenue. We should constantly be thinking, if someone's got an idea but it generates no income, it's not good for our town.
And to that point, and actually all the commentary, when you look at your revenues in the future, it's going to be about your future cash flows. And so that's what so you make investments, yes, and you have to start looking at what those future cash flows are. And so you're trying to find a way to be able to fund things for a long period of time. Your contracts for fire or whatever are for long periods of time. And they're for residents that you don't even know exist yet. And so what we have to do is just continue. And so even like when we look at the northeast corner, for example, it's about finding the way that we can maximize the total amount of revenue we can get in any particular given area, knowing that there may be some investment that has to be a part of that. And as a strategy, what we try to do is minimize whatever out-of-pocket cash that we have to apply to anything is. And so even when we look at this particular project, we're going to minimize what that out-of-pocket cash is, or we're going to have to look at, if we're coming out with out-of-pocket cash, what our returns are and what our risks are. And we'll evaluate those things. And so like when we see numbers here, yeah, this is a generalized litmus idea of what is it you want to kind of pursue and how do you want to pursue that, or what types of options do you want to pursue. And then we can bring those back in a more defined manner of what those true expectations are for revenue and what those particular costs are. But I did want to get at least some of the construction and purchase costs, even looking at what today is. And so one of the buildings that's for sale is just a little over $1 million, which is sitting over, at Bloody Basin and, the old Doppler building, just to kind of give you an idea of where some of the costs are. Now, do I think that building might be a little bit high? Probably. But it just gives you an idea. And again, the real estate market is a fluid market. So, and I just wanted to end with one other opportunity that, as you start to think about this town hall site, and we brought this up at the Economic Development Advisory Board meeting as well, is, town hall sits right next to Sunshine Way, which sits next to 11 Sundial Circle, which sits next to this parking area right here. And there's opportunity that if we're looking to move town hall, there's office already existing right next door that is office. And as we start to look at our positioning strategy, and we're trying to maybe offload non-retail uses from Easy Street and give them an opportunity to go to other places that are still in Carefree, maybe there's a way that we could potentially own a Sundial Circle. And not only are you looking at having offices there, but you have revenue opportunity. You have an opportunity to put the types of tenants in there that would be in there. And then you also have control over the vacant bank space, and you can integrate all of that development from parking all the way over to the arch into one contiguous development. And I'm not saying it's for sale, and I'm not saying you buy it today. I'm just giving you food for thought as you start going into these conversations and we start looking at direction, that maybe this is a pretty viable option, but obviously this is a bigger chunk to bite off on the front end if we're to buy something, but it makes it easier for us to be able to just move across the street. We know office space, and we know there's a return you can get on leasing space, and the return you can get on and putting someone in that 4,800 square foot space that's been basically doing nothing for the town for the last, 12, 15 years. So these are the other things that we'll consider as we start moving forward. But this is part of where we are in the due diligence process. And again, when we get into these conversations for the strategic plan, to talk about what that next step looks like and how you want to direct economic development in this due diligence process. I think this is about as much information as I can give you now to allow you to kind of, because I don't think there's enough here to just say, maybe go do it, or maybe there is, right? You say, look, I really like this particular option, see what you can do to get that one done. Here's option 1, option 2, option 3, and I'm cool with any of these 3 options, and just start working all of these options, and we can do that as well.
You know, I'd like to add, the town hall site is really our best option for a restaurant. I mean, it's got the great connection to the town, it has the best views, the connection to the sundial. There's no other location where a restaurant would prosper. And we, you know, my family and I mean, we would love more choices for restaurants here. And I talk to my friends around Scottsdale. They love coming up here, but the restaurants, you know, we have a handful. This is, right now, it's not the highest and best use for this property to be the administration for Carefree. Carefree can easily move to the building that we've been talking about. We can give it a good facelift. And economically, you're hardly spending a little over $1 million to do that. So to get the wheels rolling on redevelopment for the town hall, I think really has to happen. And we control it. We don't control other spaces like Warren Plaza and Los Bertones. We don't have enough control there. So this is our best option, and it should happen now.
Any other comments before we have public comment? So, okay, we'll have public comment. John Trainer.
I'm stiff from sitting and listening. It seemed to me, as I look back over time, I keep hearing about what a wonderful place Carefree is, what a wonderful town Carefree is, and it is. That's why I live here. That's why a lot of people live here. And it's interesting that people that don't live here have all the great ideas about what it should be. And I've heard this story about Town Hall for, I don't know, 8, 10 years now. Yeah, it's a great spot. It's a crap building. Everybody agrees on that. Who wants to move there? We're not in the construction business. And I don't see restaurants or chef-driven restaurants lining up here. Does anybody? I mean, I want good restaurants here too. Does anybody see those people lining up? The thing we should be talking about every meeting is the northeast corner. Every meeting. Our best opportunity for sales tax, everybody has admitted, is the northeast corner. Yet here we sit and we talk about that. Why? Let's talk about something that's been going on for a long time with zero progress. How does that happen? We don't know. Us sitting, we don't know. So I'm just going to keep talking until I hear somebody say something intelligent about the northeast corner. Why are we putting all of our eggs into that building? Who wants to spend $5 million? Who even wants to spend $2 million for town hall? I don't. And I think if you ask the residents that live here, they don't either.
Okay, thanks, John. And then I think Matthew Thomas says 8 and 9, so sorry I missed you on 8.
No, it's all right. I didn't understand the protocol.
No, you're cool.
Yeah, thanks. I'm the son of Gabrielle Thomas right here. And so I'm hearing a lot about this from her and her friends, you know, secondhand. So pardon me for not having my homework all done, but I had some basic questions that I was curious about, which John has touched on. So I'll be brief. But I was wondering, I look at this and I understand the dream, and I understand it sounds like your theory about building this and developing it and people will gravitate toward it. It's sort of inclusive of the idea of build it and they will come, which every man under 70 knows exactly what I'm talking about with that. And my concern is, with my mother being a property holder and you know, resident of the town, is that what happens if it doesn't? And what are the finances? I'm unclear on this. I know that there was a lot spent. What was it on the water installations, the water treatment? What was it? Something around how many $1 million?
20.
20? All right. I've heard higher numbers, but all right, I'll take that. That's a big number. And I understand we have some, you know, cash on hand, right? What happens if you do all this investment and you don't get the home run? Home runs are awesome. We love home runs. They're infrequent. So what is Plan B? How do we hedge this? What do we, I read through, I only looked at it last night briefly, so pardon me, I didn't read all 85 pages, but I look at it and I see a lot of things talking about the mojo that you get when you combine synergistically all these, the different things you talked about. But it doesn't make sense to me that, I feel like it's putting the cart before the horse. There's been a whole bunch of money being spent, which John spoke more eloquently about or more articulately about than I am. But I feel like there should be something, there should be an idea, there should be an explanation of how we know for sure that this would work. Because you do all this, you put in a white chocolate, imagine, just let's assume they would come. And what happens if they don't draw? If they don't get it, where are we then? And where are those costs? Who's carrying them? In any case, I thank you for allowing me to speak, and I wish I had a clearer picture of the whole thing so I could say something more constructive. But in any case, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. So
Yeah.
first, before Steve answers, I would just invite you to come on in and talk to us, and Steve can fill you in. But anyway, go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, just, because I know a lot of people maybe aren't up to speed. And so, we're not talking about the town making the investment. We're not going to build anything there. And so the idea is we're going to do all the due diligence to get to a place, because it's a redevelopment area. We own the site. We can actually then go out to the site under like an RFP. And what we would do is we would seek a developer, because most restaurants don't build their own restaurants. Most of them are going to come into a development and they're going to lease. And so if we were to do something where we did like a mixed retail or mixed use, and then you can have that restaurant come in. And so the idea, and maybe there would be a restaurant that would want to come in and build very rarely do I see that. So those are the things that we've got to consider. But there's nothing that we've committed to spending. There's nothing that we've committed to that we're going to invest in, other than the fact that we have a component of cost to this if we're going to relocate the town hall, and how does all that economics play out. And so, ideally you'd want to say, well, we can swap out our property and buy something and make it clean, and it's probably not going to be that, and I've never said that it's going to be something like that, right? So what we're looking at is then we look at what's the potential for revenue on the site. And so this potential that we're looking at here is more generalized, giving an idea that there is an opportunity to create revenue there. Any product or any project that comes through is going to have financial information. They're going to have pro formas that are going to be performed on how this works out. But like anything that a town does, if you don't take a shot, there's always a risk to everything you do, right? And so you do whatever you can to mitigate that risk as much as you can, and you go with a qualified project. And so if you go out to RFP and then you have a competitive process, you can get 3 or 4, maybe 5 developers or users that would potentially want to do what it is you want to do. And so that's the answer. And so there's nothing that moves like tomorrow. We're not committing to spend the money. And so we're not developers. And I think that's where the misconception is we just got a piece of property, and I think people want to see a better use of it. I also want to address the fact that we did have 2 open houses. We did get community input, and through the position process, they interviewed dozens of stakeholders, both internally, property owners, businesses. They also interviewed people outside the community, developers that would potentially want to develop here, commercial real estate, brokerage firms, and tenants as well. So there was a big, broad base of information to kind of drive the information that they were providing. And that's what we asked for from that particular consultant, because they have the expertise in repositioning malls. That's what they do for a living. And they know all those folks very well, and get that insight from them to be able to provide the type of information to help us make the best decisions. And that's all we're trying to do here. Between the last presentation and this one is just try to get as much information we can on the table to help these folks make the best decisions for you guys, and we all can come together at some point and agree that that's the right thing to do.
I just want to add one thing too. We have to look at things for the future. So we're not looking at things for today, tomorrow, 2 years from now. We've got to look at 5 years, 10 years, 20 years down the road. And what does Carefree look like? And we hope it looks just like it does, but just more charming, right? But you do have development going in Scottsdale. Now, we don't have control over that, but it's a large development. It's not going to be developed by tomorrow, but it will be developed, let's just say, the next 5 years. Those people are going to much prefer to come our way versus going south where there's a lot more traffic. So we don't want to be, after the fact, 5 years from now, they're already in, and then we're trying to do something. It'll be more expensive for us, harder to do. We have to kind of think ahead proactively. And I think that's why we're just trying to look at all the options that could be possible.
So
think-
from a marketing standpoint, I mean, we can get a lot of people up here right now. And Madison can go out and we can do all kinds of promotions and stuff, but right now, there's nothing here.
You understand, I
So-
agree with that.
So we don't
Right,
want to
yeah.
start doing that until we have something to give people when they come. And that's what Steve is trying to work on. We're trying to find the right types of businesses that will bring people up here, and once people get here, they'll appreciate our charming town, and they'll stay because there are places to eat and there are things to do. And I think that's our ultimate goal.
When you say there's no, we're not, contractors or developers or whatever, right? What about the building, and I don't want to waste other people's time, because I'm uninformed, but I wonder, there's the talk of a new town hall and all of these other things going on. Does that, why is that happening if the current facility is functional and good enough?
We're just looking for new revenue streams, trying to, this is kind of what the council member said here. So trying to think ahead, trying to prime the pump for the future. Our revenue generators, the bench is thin, so we lose Bashes, we lose Lowe's, Resort. It's a problem. So you want to have some depth, and that we're just trying to make us stronger. So when that happens, and it'll happen, things fail, everything fails someday, so that we don't go off the rails.
And this
I would
is-
just suggest you have some really good questions, and I would just make an appointment with Steve and connect
Sure.
with each other. And
Sheila's reached out to me, I'm just.
And we just
Okay.
need to remember that this is a prime location. This has great traffic. It's a good piece of property. It's right across the street from a hotel. There's a lot of potential to that site, so we just have to figure out how to deal with it.
Okay.
Thank you for your time, yeah.
Okay, John Nimsky.
John Nimsky. I don't have a whole lot to say. I have a question, and it's specific to the town hall. And that is, when we talk about relocating the town hall, wherever it might go, to date, I have not seen any data that says, okay, we're looking for so many square feet, accommodating so many staff members, yada, yada, yada. Because at least my experience is that before you start looking for a place to put a function or an operation, you got to know how many square feet you're looking for. And I serve on the Planning and Zoning Committee. I'm on the Economic Development Advisory Council. Maybe I fell asleep, but I haven't seen any statistics regarding that. Any data that says we're looking for 3,000 square feet, we're looking for 2,000 square feet, whatever the square footage is.
Yeah.
And it seems to me that should be one of the first things
That's
that
fair
one
enough.
does.
And so what Steve
Thank
did is embedded in this report is 4,500 square feet is the number he's throwing around. He doesn't have a head count, but a reasonable head count would probably be like current staff, throw in a margin of 2 more someday, and then you have a number of 17. And a big chunk of them are in the building department across the way.
Yeah, I mean,
But 4,500 square feet.
Okay, but does that include a conference area?
No, it includes, okay, well, we can divide it up, but you wanted a number, and that's a number that Steve put out there. And we can plan the floor plan, we can talk about that as well. But
yeah. And there's,
4,500 square feet.
and when you look at it, we already own we own the office building over where the water company is. Maybe
45, is there, excuse me, you have some more to say to us? Oh, you have some more to add?
You understand what I'm saying?
Well, then come on, please help me understand.
Well, it's one thing to say, I saw the total square footage, but that doesn't tell anybody much. In other words, what does that include? What functions does that include? How many staff members does that include? Because that requires so many parking spaces, et cetera. Just to throw out a 4,500 square foot number isn't very informative.
Okay, I'm sure we can come up with that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a space plan would have to be done. We're going through a whole new transition on leadership here, and so maybe different ideas about how staffing gets done, and so there's a lot of things that we need to consider as we move forward on that. You know, but
Okay.
you know, so you try to find somewhere in between here and there where you think it's going to be, and that's the numbers that you have right now.
So I would suggest before we do the strategic plan, come up with some,
Yeah, we can. I'll sit down with CJ and we'll sit down with Kristen and kind of see what we think the headcount's going to be.
okay,
and
fair enough.
storage issues and stuff like that. We also have the water company, and maybe we'd want to consolidate with them to a different location and do something that other piece of real estate. Those are just things we got to start thinking about, you know, holistically as we look at the overall, all the assets that we own in the town. So,
Okay. Mike Braun, where are you?
Good evening, all. It's nice to see you here all again. I'm going to go a completely different direction, okay? Number one, we're not going to get anybody to come build a $5 million building there unless we do something. We, the town, do something. Every place I have ever worked, we've had an economic development committee, we've had an economic development fund, whereby if you want somebody to go and invest money and build on that property, which I think is a good idea, okay? I think we ought to move Town Hall, get it out of there. We ought to tear it down and have a pad-ready acre and a quarter, I believe, if you close off the street. I believe that's what it was. Pad-ready for someone to come in and develop, and we ought to be willing to put 10% into that, repaid to the city by sales tax. You're not going to get anybody to come up here at this point in time and do that investment because we don't have the ability to show them that we can, in fact, put enough people into that building to make it worth their while. We need to make that commitment. We, the town, need to make some of that commitment. That's my comment.
Okay, well, thank you, Mike. Any other comments on this agenda item? Okay, so we'll revisit this during the strategic plan. You'll do some homework beforehand.
yep. If there's any other additional information you need for either of these items for the strategic plan, please reach out to me and I'll get that information to you.
Including gentleman Matt.
Yep.
Okay, and we'll move to call to the public. We have one gentleman at least. Okay. All right, so call to the public is agenda item number 10. Those wishing to address the council need not request permission in advance. The public may address the council on matters not on the agenda. At the conclusion of an open call to the public, individual members of the public body may respond to criticism made by those who have addressed the public body, may ask staff to review a matter, direct staff to study the matter, reschedule the matter for further consideration and discussion at a later date, or may ask that a matter be put on a future agenda. However, the council may not discuss or take legal action at this time. Please limit your comments to not more than 3 minutes. So first up is Ariane Buser.
Oh, first?
Last
Last one to put my card in. Oh, gosh. Hello, this is Ariane Buser. I haven't spoken in a while. Nice to see you all. First of all, Mayor, thank you so much for mentioning the Carefree Park event that's coming up on March 21st. I think that this is a fantastic opportunity for the community to come and see what Carefree Park is all about. In case you're not familiar with, Carefree Park is a nonprofit organization, grassroots, and we are trying to preserve the only leftover open space that is here, accessible open space that is here within the Carefree town limits. It's only a quarter mile up the road, and it's right on Mule Train and Cave Creek Road. And we are wholly trying to save this land. As you can see, everywhere around us, we are absolutely being engulfed by development. Now, whether that be what's happening right on the east side of Carefree Park, what's happening up at the corner of Bartlett Lake Road and Cave Creek Road, or right in Scottsdale at Windmill and Stagecoach, development is engulfing us. This is our one opportunity to really work together as a community to try and save this beautiful piece of land that is home to over 250 old growth saguaro. So imagine how long it takes for a saguaro to grow its arm. It's at least 50 years. We have over 250 saguaro that reside on that parcel of land. It is also home to dozens of flora and fauna and animals, bobcats, coyotes, javelina, you name it, they live there. If we don't preserve this land, it will be developed. And once it's gone forever. It will be bulldozed, and we will never be able to get the beautiful and pristine Sonoran Desert back. I encourage everyone, if you've ever been curious about what Carefree Park is or what the 48 acres is, please come and join us for our event. It's on Saturday, March 21st, and you can find out more details on carefreepark.org. It's from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And please, it's open to residents. Really, we want this to be a collaborative effort. This should be a part of the town's legacy. Do you want to be known for allowing more beautiful Sonoran Desert to be built by just having more tract homes, or do you actually want to be a part of something that benefits the community? I heard in Steve's presentation, wellness, nature-focused town. Well, why not have beautiful walking trails that are accessible to everyone? That is a part of being well and happy with your life, if you can get out and explore nature. And these will be accessible trails that everyone in the town, visitors, it will bring visitors to this town as well. Please, I encourage you to go to carefreepark.org, and I really hope that you consider coming out and supporting this really invaluable cause, because once that land is gone, it is gone forever. We will never be able to get it back. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you, Ariane. Gary Savage.
Mayor Crane, council members, and fellow residents, good evening. 12 years ago, my wife and I moved to Scottsdale from New Orleans because we've both been victims of violent crimes over the decades in New Orleans. We wanted someplace safe, but we never felt comfortable in Scottsdale. So after many visits to this friendly town, we realized it could be our home. We found a beautiful house on 6 acres. Half of it is wash, a privately owned wash. When we bought the property, it didn't say we were now owners of 3 acres of private property and 3 acres of kind of private property. Having been in the insurance industry for 30 years, mostly risk management, I knew that my insurance company would have a problem with the attractive nuisance that is the wash. The solution was to transfer risk by putting up no trespassing signs, which we did, despite an email address on the signs to request permission. Many folks simply ignored the signs. I still tried to meet as many as possible with a smile and a spirited good morning. Most were friendly, but some were hostile. I've been cursed out and given the middle finger several times on my property that I own, where I live, by trespassers. It's where I train and run my dogs. It's where I do physical therapy after recent back surgery. And by God, it's where we should feel safe and secure. Despite the city's signs in the wash, ATVs have sped through our backyard, the wash. One came within feet of hitting me and my dogs the other day. And as many of you probably already know, I was knocked to the ground on my property by a large trespassing Hummer. It resulted in a trip to the emergency room that night. Unfortunately, social media, which I don't pay much attention to unless it affects me, spread lies. Lies told by that violent and possibly drunk Hummer driver. We don't want to make enemies, but here's the thing. Carefree is stuck with us. I don't have another move in me. We humbly ask Carefree residents, please find a way to welcome us to this amazing city. If you can't be polite, at least respect our property rights. You have every right to disagree with me, but you don't have the right to break the law to prove your opinion to me. But look, if you meet us, you'll find out that we're New Orleans friendly and it's our default setting. All that being said, I don't want any Alabama fans on my property. Just kidding. God bless and go LSU Tigers. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jerry. Next up, Emily Kyle. May have mispronounced. She may not be here to correct me.
Emily had to leave, so I've been asked to take her spot.
Oh, okay, well, if you fill out a form, you can come up and speak.
I did fill out a form.
Oh, okay, in the pile. John Trainer's next. Yeah, I'll go
I
in
forgot
order.
I did that.
Must have filled out 3 forms.
I think I think probably I wanted to bring up a prior meeting again when I publicly asked for an update, which I think is your responsibility anyway, for an update on the northeast corner. We were told months and months ago, every month we were going to get an update. I cornered the economic development director after the last meeting, and we had a very interesting and direct conversation. And I won't recount that conversation again now, because it was between he and I, but it was not a good conversation. Not a good conversation for the town, not a good conversation if I write about it. I would really, really suggest the town talk to us about what is going on that corner. You can talk about town hall till the cows come home. Nobody's going to listen. No matter, we invited these guys in, we gave them money, we did all of that stuff. 50% of our sales tax, nothing.
Don't shake your hand at me.
So, I beg your pardon?
I said, don't shake your hand.
Okay, I won't shake your hand. Anyway, I was addressed from behind me.
No, you addressed.
Okay, thank you. I think you owe us that explanation about what's going on. Because you can put that building for sale, you can pray that somebody will come in and do something with it. It's not going to make up for the loss at that corner. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll have an agenda item on April 7th. Arnold Oldock.
Or Emily Kyle, or both. Arnold Oldock, I'm hopefully going to end on a positive note.
We're expecting it.
Anyway, first of all, we've been working on trying to raise awareness on the noise of leaf blowers. Clint Miller's been active. Emily Kyle and myself, we've been going to Black Mountain for breakfast. It's actually a pretty good place to go. And I think Emily sent an email to Madison Garrett to start looking at a way to put that into our newsletters. So in this month's Carefree Connection, there's actually a very nice article that Madison wrote, and I think all of us should look at that and follow the sort of the philosophy that's behind this thing. And really, the philosophy is, to remind people, a leaf blower puts about as much noise out as a jackhammer, puts about as much noise out as a Harley Davidson with no baffles in the mufflers. And so when you crank these things up at 7 in the morning, Sunday morning, or even Saturday morning, I have one behind my house that does it all the time. Emily has a golf course. And it would be really neighborly of people to speak to their landscaper and ask them not to blow early in the morning. And even beyond that, consider the consequences of blowing leaves around in the desert. Why would you put a leaf blower on the desert just to blow stuff around? Rake it and keep the detritus around, keep the leaves. It's good for the environment. And as Clint mentioned earlier, we also have valley fever in here. And once you blow the dust up, guess what you're doing? You're blowing valley fever in the air. So there are a lot of good benefits for us not to use leaf blowers. Now, blow your driveway and get the stuff in the desert, that's all really good. But try to minimize the leaf blower. Anyway, we're working on something and we're trying to raise community awareness, and I think it's a good neighborly thing to do, and I think it's a real benefit to a Carefree. Anyway, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Arnold. And the town will do more messaging. Okay, that closes call to the public. Item 11, adjournment. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, thank you for all sticking around.